Hello and welcome to the Voice of Todd. I'm Tom and this is Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 6, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. First off, I don't know where the tragedy is in this episode. All the others you can figure out what it's meaning to. I have no idea what the tragedy is leading to. Get that out the way quickly because I've not written that in my notes, but it's just occurred to me. So we're going to do the quick overview thing again. First, this episode was directed by Robert Rodriguez, so I'm going to be slightly biased towards this. I've loved him since I first saw Desperado when I was 13. In fact, Desperado was the first DVD I ever bought. This is obviously heavily restrained in the world that Jon Favreau is building. But let's just get straight into the breakdown. Obviously there will be spoilers in this, and there are a few questions and issues I have at the end that I probably want to spend quite a bit of time on. So this could run on a little bit. I do apologise in advance. But we open with Mando and the child. Child's playing with a little ball thing that he always seems to have now. And Mando just says, Grogu, which is of course the child's name. And the child makes a little noise and looks up at him, and Mando just bursts out laughing, which is exactly what I did every time his name was mentioned last episode. And I still laughed at it this time. It's still funny. So, yeah, fine. I'm okay with that, poking fun at Grogu. Fine. They have a little scene where Mando says, look, basically, when a Jedi comes for you, you've got to go. I can't teach you. I'm not strong enough. Great, whatever. It's a little scene. They're very heavy on the fatherly kind of nature of Mando at this point, I think. Which, I mean, it works. But it seems to be every 5 minutes. We then straight cut to Tython, the planet that we were told about by Ahsoka last episode. So we've cut out everything else. We're just straight there. Seems a little quick to me, but we are on episode 6 of an 8-episode series, so that kind of makes sense. We trying to land at the Seeing Stone, where we're going to put the child so he can reach out in the Force. They can't land directly on top of the stone, so they have to use the jetpack to get there. And it's at this point that the Mandalorian says, let's travel with the windows down. Or words to that effect. Who the fuck talks like that? That completely threw me out of the immersion so early in the episode. It's a tiny little dialogue thing. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't change anything. It just really bugged me. Bugged me the first time I watched it, and it bugged me even more the second time I watched it. That's why I'm bringing it up. No other dialogue choices have stood out like that to me that I can remember. But this one really did bug me, and that's why it's the thumbnail for this video. Yeah, so we basically land. Mando puts the child on the magic rock and to do his thing, and then Slave 1 shows up. Slave 1. Boba Fett's ship. And Jango Fett's ship, but fuck yeah, Boba Fett. So, I mean, again, the music, it really kicked in here. And right the way through this episode, the music has been amazing. Overall, the music has been the best thing about this show. There was a couple of episodes ago, there was a naff one. But I think the music is just spot on. It really has that westerny vibe, and it just works in the Star Wars realm and what we're used to. Love the music. Just wanted to touch on that. So yeah, Slave 1 comes in. Mando sees it as a threat. Says he'll protect the child, and then the Force barrier goes up around the child as he's reaching out in the Force. Boba Fett steps out the ship. He's got his cloak. Well, it's that picture that's next to me. Cloak, his gaffy sticks, and his rifle. And he says, I want my armor back. He's got Fennec with him, who he saved, the bounty hunter from last season, played by Ming-Na Wen. He's sort of healed her. He's augmented her stomach where she got shot, and pulled her back to life by the sounds of it. And she's got this life debt with him. Really cool. I love Ming-Na Wen, and Fennec was pretty cool. One of the standouts that I remember in season 1, so she must have made an impact. But yeah, she's still alive. She's got a sights trained on the child, and Boba Fett just wants to talk to the Mando and reclaim the armor that's rightfully his. We get that whole "you're not Mandalorian" garbage from Mando again, but that quickly gets broken up by the Empire sending down a troop transport full of stormtroopers. And this is really the bulk of the episode. Mando runs off to get the child, who is in this force barrier, impenetrable force barrier, as Mando tries to break through and get the child to pull him off to safety. Leave the planet, he gets blown back by the barrier and knocked out unconscious. The badass bounty hunter that this series is set on is just knocked unconscious by a force barrier and is rendered useless for most of this episode. Issue number 2, and I didn't even write that one down. But it gives Boba Fett and Fennec some time to fight off the troopers. Really cool. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see Boba Fett doing some stuff. He's brutal with his gaffy stick. Just smashing up armor and stabbing them with the pointy end. This action sequence went on far too long. It was cool to see the first time, but it felt very bloated. Didn't make a huge amount of sense to me. Fennec, who is, I think, season 1, I remember being a sharpshooter, and it is referenced again in this that she is a sharpshooter. She could have dropped the mortar trooper and the 2 troopers manning the turret without even batting an eye, but they seemed to cause a lot of trouble for her. Maybe she just didn't see them, although it's clear that they were in her line of sight when she was shooting other troopers. Like I say, this episode was 30 minutes long. This is a very bloated action sequence. Yeah, it's fun. It was cool. It's nice to see something, but I'm going to touch on the stormtroopers later. But it felt very bloated. Mando wakes up again, can't break through the barrier because it's still up while the child is reaching out in the Force. So he goes off to protect him from the stormtroopers. At this point, Boba Fett is near the Razor Crest and he's just tearing through troopers with his gaffy stick. He is not taking prisoners. That was my favourite thing of the episode. Just seeing Boba Fett just doing stuff, actually doing something. In the original trilogy, he doesn't do anything. He's this really cool bounty hunter sent to get Han Solo, my favourite Star Wars character. And he just falls in a sarlacc pit after being accidentally hit in the back. Waste of a character. That's a Lucas thing, though. So it's cool that he's back and we actually get to see him beating the shit out of people. But Mando catches up with Fennec. This was another cool little scene. They have a nice little team up and they have a little chat about what happened in the episode they were together in season 1. As Mando's not deflecting, but taking blaster shots on the Beskar armor and he's protecting Fennec as she's shooting out from behind him. Really cool little team up. I very much enjoyed that. That was another good bit. I mean, some of the action was incredible. Really well thought out, and the teamwork between the 2 of them, the 3 of them, really good. But it was bloated. But they're surrounded by troopers, Mando and Fennec, and it's looking a bit bad. The troopers are saying, stand down, lower your weapons. And Boba Fett shows up in his armor and uses every weapon on that set of armor to just murder everything. He's using wrist rockets at close range. He's got the knee spikes out of the knee pads that I didn't even know were part of it anymore. Didn't use the flamethrower, but he's just brutal. Tamara Morrison, obviously playing Boba Fett, played Django in the Clone Wars and voiced clones, and brilliant in this. Absolutely brilliant in this. Hats off to him, if I was wearing one. He made Boba Fett cool again. So, at this point, having been shot to shit by 3 bounty hunters, the stormtroopers decide to run off back to their ships. I'll get on to stormtroopers later, because it's a real bugbear of mine now. But they get back in the shuttles, start to fly off, and Boba Fett fires one rocket out of his jetpack and blows both of them up. Then, out of nowhere, an orbital strike on the Razor Crest and just obliterates it. So, after being battered, completely battered, repaired twice, the Razor Crest is now hit with an orbital strike and annihilated. Boba Fett heads off to Slave One to get it in the air, and then we can cut to Moff Gideon on the bridge of his Star Destroyer, big smile on his face, and he says, "Send in the Dark Troopers." Which they do. Now, the Dark Troopers are basically robots, from what I can gather. I don't know anything about them. I know they're in the expanded, or the previous expanded canon. I think this is the first time they've actually been brought into the Disney canon, but I don't know anything about them. Are they made of Beskar or something? There's got to be something special about them. But they have rocket boots, because why wouldn't they? And they fly down out the ship and get to the child before Mando and Fennec can, and basically take the child back to Moff Gideon. Boba Fett is in Slave One at this point. He's got them targeted. He's about to destroy the 4 of them. Mando calls him off, tells him not to do it. Doesn't want anything to happen to the child, which I can understand, but I don't know. A little bit ropey on there, I think. So that's it, really. Going through the wreckage of the Razor Crest, where Mando finds the Beskar spear. Again, I think this is for Bo-Katan. I think she's going to be coming in very soon, and something's got to hold up against the Darksaber. I'm guessing it would be Beskar from what we've seen. Boba proves that it's his armour, and it was his father's armour before him. It also mentions Django being part of Death Watch. That was Mandalorian radicalists from the Clone Wars. It's all in the animated series. But it confirms that Django was a foundling and is actually Mandalorian, which is great. It's one of George Lucas's mistakes that I've always hated, was saying that Boba Fett and Jango Fett weren't Mandalorian. It makes no sense to not have them. So I like that that's been fixed. That was one of my issues, but it's not an issue with this show, it's just an issue with what Lucas has done over the years. I have a few of those. And that seems to have been fixed. They've brought Boba and Django being Mandalorian into canon. I'm more than happy with that. Boba and Fennec pledge, because Boba's got his armor back, he pledges his service to Mandalorian to get the child back. We then cut real quickly to Navarro, and Mando's enlisting Cara Dune to help him break Bill Burr's character from season 1. I can't remember his name. Mayfeld something. He was an Imperial, or a former Imperial sharpshooter turned bounty hunter. A cool character. I don't really care for him. A cool character. But Mando wants to break him out of a Republic prison because he can help him find where Moff Gideon is. What? And then we get a final scene with Moff Gideon walking into the cell that is keeping the child in, and the child is just tossing stormtroopers around the room. 32 minutes. That's how long the episode was. And it was a very bloated action scene. And basically, how can we just degrade stormtroopers? I did like this episode. I liked it more the first time and less the second time I watched it. I love seeing Boba Fett just murdering and being a real badass. That was fantastic. Ming-Na Wen can do no wrong. I thought she was great in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A couple of other things I've seen her in. She's always been great. She's very physical. and she can do the martial arts and all that side of it. We didn't really get that from her this time around, which is disappointing. But it's great that she's back. Really cool little team up with Fennec and Boba Fett. I do have one request, actually, if anyone from Disney or Star Wars is listening. Can we get Robert Rodriguez to direct a Boba Fett Fennec team up movie, please? I'd really enjoy that. Thank you. Thanks. Now, on to my issues, and I've touched on a couple of these because I kind of had to. But I'm just going to run what I've got written down. Issue number 1, the biggest issue for me. Stormtroopers are just being treated like total jokes in this show. The Stormtroopers that I remember from the original trilogy were highly trained and solid, steadfast soldiers who were there to bring about the will of the Empire. They didn't run away from rebels unless they were letting them go. I mean, they did get beaten by teddy bears, I guess, or murder bears. But they're being treated like a child's plaything, being thrown around a room. Just they're well-trained soldiers. This isn't how you... No, you're ruining Stormtroopers, and that's, to my mind, that's cheapening the efforts of the rebels. If Stormtroopers were this useless, they shouldn't have had any problem against them. I don't like that. Using them as a cheap joke. I've touched on it. I'm going to touch on it again. Who the hell says, let's travel with the windows down in a space world where they probably don't have a windows that open? Stupid line. Absolutely stupid line. And I'm nitpicking because there wasn't much else in this episode. And I know I'm nitpicking, but I feel like I've got to say this stuff because this series has been so good and I haven't had many complaints. And we now have a few issues with this because the story wasn't strong enough, it seems. Issue 3. Dark Troopers. They're obviously badass. We're obviously meant to fear them. They sent 4 down to pick up the child, and then they just rocket booted off. You could have had something happen. 3 of them having a little shootout with Fennec and Mando, and blaster bolts deflecting off them or something. Well, make them do anything. Because they just jetted in, picked up a child and jetted off. It just felt like a waste. You should be doing something to show us why we need to fear them and why they're this big thing. They just felt wasted. Issue 4. Bill Burr's character is an ex-Imperial sharpshooter who has been bounty hunting for God knows how long. How the hell is he going to know where Gideon is? Nobody knows where Gideon is. That's the point. I feel like they're just forcing Bill Burr's character back. And the character was fine. I don't care for him, but you don't need to shoehorn him in. But I withhold the right to change my mind if it's epic. But from what I can tell at this point, it just seems stupid. Really pointless. Issue 5. This isn't really an issue with the series. This is an issue with George Lucas wanting to change things in Star Wars lore when he was in charge of it. So I'm glad that Boba is now a Mandalorian. And going back, Django is now confirmed as Mandalorian in canon. That's good. All we need now is for somebody to just say, hey, remember that time that Han shot Greedo in the bar? Yeah, Greedo never stood a chance. He didn't even get a shot off. And just confirm that Han shot first because Han shot first. Everybody knows it. Just confirm it. That's really the biggest issue that I have with Lucas fucking things up. But I feel with this episode, this is episode 6 of an 8-episode season. They've been short episodes. Usually there's been enough story to fill it, or there's been characters that have come in at a point that they've felt well stuck together. This didn't feel throwaway because there is some pretty big story stuff that happens in it. But how they utilised what they had to play with here didn't fit well with me. The next 2 episodes need to be really good and get us back on that. And then maybe it's a 2-parter, or maybe where next episode is setting up. It sounds like it's going to be a prison break with Boba and Fennec and Mando and Cara. And then Bill Burr's character. That's probably going to be the full episode because we're looking at, half an hour again? They're short episodes, and to bloat them out how they have done this week, you could have just, I don't know what they could have done. They could have just done more with what they had. I did enjoy this episode. Less so second time around, but the fact that I'm picking up on issues and stupid little nitpicky things like the Dark Troopers not having anything to do, I shouldn't be thinking about that with 2 episodes to go and so much that could be happening. It was just a weak episode. The action was good, but it was a weak episode. And that's not what I want to feel about this, especially when you bring back Boba Fett and put him in the armor. But yeah, it wasn't the strongest episode. It felt more like a season 1 episode to me. And maybe I'm slightly jaded by coming off the back of The Orville, which is very well written. You can check out, I'll put a card up. You can check out my review of season 1 and 2 of The Orville. Very different to this, obviously. But this just didn't feel like a very strong narrative episode. Which is a shame because Robert Rodriguez is amazing and he can do so much more if they gave him the tools to do it. But we are where we are. 2 more episodes. Hopefully we'll get back on the good fun, great story kind of ride that we've been on with the last handful of episodes. But we'll see. I like to be left with that feeling of I need to know what happens next week. I haven't got that. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then we've got a prison break for a character I'm not bothered about next week. A little disappointed. But thank you to everyone that's watched this, and I will see you in the next one.